try to get me fired for drinking at work, enjoy being escorted out by security. This happened a few years ago when I worked as a facilities maintenance tech at a level 1 trauma center in Central Texas. I was in this position for about 4 years and had established myself as a solid, reliable employee with a strong work ethic who took pride in my work. My direct manager, in addition to the other department managers and directors, knew me from my previous work as the director of safety years before. I was the guy that had conducted their safety meetings and inspections, so they were familiar with my education and experience. I lead with this information as it provides some credibility to the ending of this story as a he said, I said event. Anyway, we had a new guy named Dan in my department. He came in with an over-the-top, all-knowing attitude that somehow rubbed me the wrong way. For some reason, he always had a one-up story in every conversation. I'm single, I ride my Harley to work every day and I enjoy drinking with friends after work at the local happy hour bar. After a few weeks on the new job, Dan felt the need to tell me that he's always wanted a Harley but his wife won't allow it. He would like to go have a beer with me after work but he can't because he has a problem. I have no problem with any of that and simply commiserate with him. After another week or two, I was called into my manager's office. He proceeded to tell me that it has been brought to his attention that I smell like booze when arriving for work and asked if I have a drinking problem. I answered no, there's no problem, I simply enjoy a couple of drinks after work, but never to any kind of excess. He smiles, shakes his head, and says I didn't think so. Go on back to work. I start to wonder who would say such a thing but forget about it after a couple of days. 3 weeks later I'm called into his office again. Tom, he says it's been mentioned that you appear to be drunk on the job. I just stand there dumbstruck. Who would say such a destructive thing at work? Of course, he can't or won't tell me, but does say I need to make sure I toe the line. Work continues and nothing else happens for a while. Let me add that while on duty we carry two-way radios so that work orders can be assigned as problems are reported. Well, it seems that our new employee Dan doesn't seem to like answering the radio and getting assigned work, preferring to walk around chatting with the nurses and other employees of the hospital. I'm pretty sure his work metrics were not really valid and were simply pencil whipped. I'll add that he felt some need to tell folks that he was the lead, supervisory tech in the department when in reality there was no such designation. A few weeks later I find myself standing in front of the desk of the director of maintenance. He asks me if I have a drinking problem. Again I answer in the negative. He's familiar with me as we worked together while I was the director of safety. We are both prior military and have also had drinks together during happy hour. He states that it's been brought to his attention that I am drunk when arriving for work and that this issue has been brought up more than once. At this point, I'm really starting to wonder who is trying to get me fired and why. To alleviate any suspicion, I volunteer to take a booze test if warranted. The director tells me it's not necessary but will follow through if I want it and I do. Needless to say, I pass with flying colors. Through the work rumor mill, I find out it's the new guy Dan that keeps bringing my name up and making accusations. Unfortunately for him, previously as director of safety, I have worked very closely with HR and am well versed in how these games are played. As the days go by I begin to pick at Dan, needling him about his lack of production at work, how his wife prohibits him from owning a Harley, etc. and I can tell he's beginning to get a bit rattled with my jabs. Finally one day, he's passing me and a fellow coworker in the hall stating that he's going to fix something in the mechanical room and won't be able to answer the radio if called. I snidely respond that it's nothing new, you never answer the radio. That statement hit a nerve and he spun around so fast it was comical. You don't know who you're messing with, he said. This old man will hurt you, he continued on now just inches from my face. I stood there in awe, grinning from ear to ear. He had done exactly what I had hoped for plus I had a witness standing right there. I didn't back down or flinch but merely stared him down and stated that's it, I've had enough, we'll settle this right now. I proceeded to march down the hallway with Dan and my fellow coworker close behind. He thought I was going to fight, and walked straight into my manager's office. I proceeded to tell him that I had been threatened with physical violence and wanted to make a report of a hostile work environment. I'll end the story there. Needless to say, I remained employed at the hospital while a few hours later, Dan was escorted off the property by security, never to be heard from again. And yes, I was correct in my assumption of who had me in their sights. I never again heard about being drunk at work.